Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam, and in today's video it is time again for another reading wrap up. I can't believe we're in the Burr months. We're nearing the end of the year, we're in that last quarter. So let's chat about the books that I read in August. I ended up reading 12 books this month. Starting out the month, Bestie Emily and I ended up reading one of our favorite things to do, which is doing a trauma read. So just reading something that's usually very short, very much like erotica, just to kind of break up the monotony of longer books, kind of just start of the month feeling accomplished that you have read something very quickly, usually less than 100 pages, just very quick, silly, kind of out there plot sometimes. So we start out the month reading Hard as Wood by, I think it's C.M. Ferry. This is a Pinocchio erotic retelling. And I was very pleasantly surprised. This was written very well. So especially with this book being, I think, only around 50 pages, it was written very well. There was a plot. I think being a retelling, I feel like a lot of people know what the story of Pinocchio is. So you kind of had that background already, but I feel like the setting was built up really well. Kind of the plot was there. You could tell there was a relationship, like a history. It was really sweet, but was also just ridiculous and exactly what I was hoping to get out of it. So I actually ended up rating this 4 stars. I had a great time with it. Very much just a vibes and just like having a good time reading it. Definitely wasn't like a literary masterpiece by any means, but that's not what I was looking for. So I would definitely check these out if you're looking for something kind of ridiculous, a bit silly to break it up, just a short, spicy, good time. I would recommend. I thought it was really fun. The next book that I read was Foxglove by Adeline Grace. I'm so excited that I finally able to get back to this series, and I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars. I didn't like this one quite as much. I feel like the relationships we got in this one kind of broke down a bit of the ones that were made in the first book, which I found to be kind of strange. I do enjoy the plot. It did have some twists and turns. We got in this one, we're introduced to Fate, which is a very interesting like character dynamic, I feel like, and plot choice. I feel like this one did have, there was that murder mystery sort of piece of it like the first one, but it took much more of a backseat than in the first book. And to me, this one felt a bit like filler, where we were trying to bridge the gap between the events in book one and the events in book three. And so, for that reason, it ended up being a bit predictable. But I was very excited to continue on with this series. The next book that I ended up picking up was Juniper Hill by Devney Perry. I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. I've been really enjoying this series so far. Just a lot of fun, very quick. Love the small town vibes, the big family that each of the siblings kind of has their own path that they're trying to make. So this one we're following Knox, who is the chef at the hotel, and we're also following Memphis, who is kind of running away from her old life. She has a very, very young new baby. I think he's only like a couple weeks old, and she has come to try to reinvent herself, trying to get her on track on her own. And just the backstory you can tell of both of these characters are very painful, but it was a very sweet story for the two of them. I just love their connection. I also loved that Knox was a chef, and we got to see more of his passion about food and cooking, and just kind of how he related that to a lot of the aspects of Memphis's life. It just felt very impactful. I do wish that we got to see more relationships with Memphis and other people in the town, like having friendships or even relationships with some of Knox's siblings. I think that would have just brought it up a bit more for me. And I do feel like Knox was a bit overprotective, a bit like possessive at times, and not in the book talk teehee way. I feel like the kind of suspense element that we got in the first book was a bit of a backseat in this one, but I will say the third act was definitely terrifying. So I would recommend checking trigger warnings for this one. I feel like it could affect some. Next, I picked up Wisteria by Adeline Gray, so continuing on in the Belladonna series. I ended up rating this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. In this one, we're following Blythe, and just the comments again about fate and the bickering and the connection between our two characters. Again, it was a bit predictable, but it was just so cute. There was this fox and a magical, well, I don't think it was the house that was magical, but it felt like the house was magical. But in terms of the plot, I do feel like the characters weren't necessarily trying to do anything, and there was points that were a bit slower and hard to get to, and I wanted a bit more from the ending. I wasn't really satisfied with the way that it ended, but I was really excited to get more of Blythe and just the interactions and sort of comments about life in this series overall. I think it's a lot of fun and a bit thought-provoking. I don't know. I'm very excited to have been able to finish this series, knock another series off of my list. I did really enjoy my time with this one, but I do think Belladonna was still my favorite. I don't know, just like the atmosphere and plot of that one was so good, but definitely a close second. Next, I ended up listening to Tale of the Heart Queen by Nisha J. Tooley. This is the 4th and final book in the Artifacts of Urano series, and I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. I'm so glad that I continued this series, and I am very stubborn in that I will finish a series through, finish a book through, because so many times I am pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoy something by the end. And that was the case for this series 100%. In this one, we got to see a lot more of the world, which was so interesting. It had interesting plot that was like trials and adventure-esque, open up the world and sort of the political side of it and their mythology with the number of different POVs that we got just really brought everything together and just really helped immerse you in the world and everything that was going on. I feel like we got very good growth and healing in the relationships and even the relationships with yourself, if that makes sense, in this book. I just really appreciated sort of the messaging and how everything was coming together. And I also think that it just wrapped up excellently. It was a great ending to the series. And again, I'm so glad I stuck through it and continued on because this really just did get better and better for me personally. Next, I picked up Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Senior Year Adventures Book 2, The Wrath of the Triple Goddess by Rick Riordan. In this one, we're following Percy Jackson, Annabeth Chase, and Grover. Percy is trying to get recommendation letters from various gods to be able to get accepted into university. And in this one, I probably should have, had I known, should have kept it a little bit later because this does take place over Halloween, in which our gang is pet sitting and I guess house sitting for Hecate. And it was just a little bit of chaos, just silly, typical Percy Jackson events. But it also had very impactful messaging in this book, sort of just about how your life is changing in this specific time period, like the end of high school, and I guess any period of change in your life. I also feel like most of the time I really hate when there are real life references and pop culture references in books, but there's something about Percy Jackson that Rick Riordan can do it well and can do it right because every time they come up it's just so funny. In this book specifically, and I feel like in the last book as well, there's just a lot of nods to characters that are in the rest of the universe. And so it just felt very nostalgic to me. It just made me really remember reading all of these stories for the first time. And I just had a great time with this. I ended up rating it 4 stars, mostly on vibes, but Percy Jackson is just such a cult classic and such a nostalgic read for me. Definitely grew up on these books, and I'm so glad that we're getting a bit more from these characters. Next, Bestie Emily and I ended up doing a buddy read for The Book of Azrael by Amber V. Nicole. I ended up reading this 4.5 stars. I did not know what to expect with this one, but This is a very complex world with so many types of creatures and I guess types of people. Like there's fae, there's vampires, there's shifters, there's like spirits. It's just fascinating and you're really dropped right in to the fray, like right from the jump, trying to figure out what is going on. I feel like my head was spinning the whole time of trying to figure out who's good, who's not, who are we supposed to be trusting, who are we not supposed to be trusting, who are the good guys, who am I supposed to be rooting for? And it was just nonstop. It was so much fun, like very bingeable, could not put it down. I will say some of the chapters were so long, which I really don't like a long chapter, especially with like the schedule that I have now. I very much like to, if I have time to read one chapter, I'm just going to read one chapter. I don't want to ever stop in the middle so I don't forget what's going on. I feel like I went through it all with this book. It was very emotional, very stress inducing, like very high octane, like go, go, go sort of plot. And I just had the best time. So we definitely need to get back to the series soon, but I feel like we are reading quite a few good buddy reads right now that it's so difficult to pick which one to prioritize, but we'll have to get back to this one soon, I fear. Next, I listened to another audiobook and I listened to Nice Girls Don't Win by Parvati Shallow. It's actually Nice Girls Don't Win, How I Burned It All Down to Claim My Power. This was so phenomenal and just gave an insight more into what Parvati was going through while she was on Survivor, or I guess before she was on Survivor, and how she kind of went through these seasons of life. And it was just so fascinating. And it was also kind of about, I don't know if personality traits are necessarily the right word, but the ways that people try to use to manipulate others into getting maybe what they want or as like a survival instinct. And Parvati also narrated this, and I feel like she did an amazing job narrating it, and it was just put together really, really well. So for that reason, it's a 4.5 stars. I feel like it was very insightful, heartbreaking, but also being hopeful and inspiring at the same time. And it was obviously very interesting to get the like inside scoop as to what was going on in a celebrity's life, sort of what is actually going on. I've heard other people say that it doesn't really focus on Survivor, but I do feel like she does talk a lot about Survivor, but not in the way that you would expect. I guess it was more of the like emotional relationship toll that the game had on her as opposed to actually what was going on behind the scenes, if that makes sense. But I thought this was just fantastic and just really made me excited to rewatch her seasons. And so my boyfriend and I are starting to rewatch all of the Survivor seasons. We are on season 3 right now, in anticipation for season 50 coming out. Because I grew up on Survivor and he's only started watching with me in the last couple of years. So it's just nice to get the background of some of the seasons that I was too young to watch at the time, and also just get some refresher and familiarity with some of the cast that's going to be on the new season. Anyway, big Survivor fan, but yeah, just a really interesting listen, and definitely want to read more memoirs and biographies. Next, I picked up Time of Your Life by Jessa Hastings. I ended up rating this 4 stars. This was in a reading vlog. Yes, I'll link it up in the cards. So you want to hear more like live thoughts about this book, but I feel very conflicted on how to talk about this book because with specifically Magnolia Parks and honestly the other books that Jessa Hastings has written, you can tell there is some history between some of the characters and you really get those intimate details of those relationships sort of getting caught up to where the characters are now. With this one, our characters are meeting for the very first time, and so you don't have that sort of history to fall back on. So it was very difficult for me to really believe in their relationship with it being so insta love. And even like we see them meeting for the first time very, very quickly. I think it's even in the first chapter. So even at this point, we don't have a good knowledge of any of our main characters either. So I feel like I just found it very difficult to sort of connect to anyone because we just didn't know much. We're kind of learning things at the same time. I don't know. It's one of those books where I enjoyed it, but I feel like on reread, once more books or even all books in the series have been out, I feel like it would be a lot more impactful. So this was very difficult for me to rate. Jess's writing in this is as phenomenal as ever. So just absolutely love her writing. I feel like you're really in the character's head. They feel very human. They make mistakes. They have these flaws, and you can feel the emotion in the characters. So for that reason, it was definitely a 4-star, but yeah, it was very tricky to rate this one for me. Next, I was feeling a bit nostalgic still with the Percy Jackson situation, with the Percy Jackson vibes. So I ended up listening to Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Demigod Files by Rick Riordan. This was like a collection of bonus stories and like, I guess, character details. I think it would have been a lot more interesting in the actual physical book because I think there was like fan art essentially in them. I ended up rating this 3 stars. This was just a bit of nostalgia for me, just getting to see the characters from like the original series and sort of these bonus chapters that play into some of the stories and events that take place later on in the universe in the Blood of Olympus series. And so it was just a bit of fun. So this was a 3-star for me. Definitely nothing special. Very middle grade, but also was just really sweet and cute. And again, just exactly what I wanted it to be. Next, another buddy read for Best Emily and I. We did Dark and Darker Still by Nikki St. Crow. This is another book in her spinoff for the Never King series, following Rock and Vane. And I just absolutely love this world so much. I love these characters. This was a bit different to some of her other books. It was a bit darker. It was a bit more morally gray, like fighting with the choices that you're making and the choices that are being made around you. It was very fast paced, just a fun, spicy, so messy book. So honestly, this book is just full of pain, which is very on brand for me. And the very last book that I read in August was Amid Clouds and Bones by Ella Fields, and unfortunately this did not end up working out for me. I ended up rating this 2.5 stars. I feel like the relationship was not relationshiping, and it was also just a lot darker than I expected it to be. There was some good banter, but at the same time, like, I didn't feel like there was enough of a connection or actual romance between our 2 main characters. Like, their marriage was sort of predestined for like a political choice, but it was like your typical romantasy that just didn't translate into actually me wanting to root for a male main character. And I feel like with the way that the plot and the world was set up, it tried to do too much later on. We didn't have enough time to actually get into this world, to get into the history of what was actually going on and the world and all of the relationships between all of the different divisions, the different types of people. And so by the end, it just ended up being very difficult to follow. And this just ended up taking me a very long time to read, even though it's not the longest book ever either. I just could never get into it. It was very slow and convoluted, just very difficult to follow for me personally. So unfortunately, one flop this month, but overall, I feel like I had a good reading month. Very excited to see what comes up in September and through the rest of the year. But with that being said, please let me know down below what your favorite book that you read from September was, or if you have read any of these books as well. I would love to chat with you. If you do want to find me on any of the corners of the internet, all of my links are linked down below. If you did enjoy this video, please give a like so that I know, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.